thank you so much for joining me for another video. And today we're gonna talk about one of the things that I was most excited to talk about, which is this baby boy. I want to introduce you all to this precious little thing. His name is Pua Pippin Potter, and Pua is my emotional support animal. And this is the story of how we came to meet and how I was able to get out the documentation to live with Pua on my college dorms, and how he has been the most essential part of my life the past year and a half, almost 2 years, that year and a half that we have been together, right? So he's a sleepy boy. He's probably gonna sleep the entire video, and that's okay. That's one of the many good things about Pua. He's very low energy. He's the best dog for introvert. So basically, this is not the story of how I got to the conclusion that I needed an ESA or my mental health journey, and I would definitely be making this video. It's not this one. This video is about Pua and how we met. So I decided, okay, this is the week that I'm gonna go and get my ESA. So Pua was an emotional support animal from day one. He was not a dog that I already had as a family dog or a pet, and we just upgraded him to an emotional support animal. That's not how this worked for me. So I got the decision that it was gonna be that week that I was ready to make that final step after the long process of feeling that I needed an ESA, preparing myself for an ESA, and the whole that. So he had all his things ready, he had all his tools and supplies. I decided to go get him on a Thursday. It was just the best day for me. So I didn't go to class that day, and I went to the SFSPCA, which was the local animal center for San Francisco. I decided to go with the SFSPCA because they were a lot cheaper than all the other animal centers that I looked into, and I was on a very tight budget because I was a college student. So I had spent a couple of days looking through the dogs on their website, and I saw Pua and a couple others. I knew I needed a dog who was low energy, very, very, very small. I was living on a very tight apartment at the time, and also I always just loved small dogs more. And I didn't know what breed I wanted. That wasn't a concern, but I needed a dog with hair and not fur, so short hair, because I knew it was just not gonna be for me to have the budget to take care of a dog with long hair like a Shih Tzu. I looked at Pua's picture and I wasn't sure if it was just gonna be him, but I got that in my mind, and I got to the SFSPCA, and they had this room with a lot of windows, and you need to look around and just choose a dog to meet. And I looked around and I couldn't see Pua anywhere, and I thought that was funny because all the other dogs that was on my list I could see. So one of them was just too big. The other one was just, he had just had surgery, and I knew I didn't have the time or the money to keep a dog who needed medical attention, and I didn't know if he would need more surgeries after that one. It was a knee surgery. So I got to this guy who was helping me, and I asked to see Pua. and he said, "Oh, I don't know if you want this dog. He's not very friendly. He doesn't go with anyone. He doesn't like meeting new people. I don't think he's gonna go to you. Like, why don't you take a look at this one?" And I explained that I couldn't take a dog that had just had surgery, and I wanted to see Pua. And I asked why he wasn't around, and they said, "We don't have enough windows, so we put the ones that we don't think is gonna be adopted at the back." And that was the tiniest break in my heart, and I was like, I want to see Pua. Pua had another name in the shelter, so they bring Pua out, and he immediately goes peeing. And he looks at the guy who's helping me, looks at me and says, "Well, that's a great sign because he didn't pee inside." So he was waiting to go outside to pee. And when he finished doing his business, he looked at me and he came straight at me. He came at me, he let me pet him right away. He gave me a little kiss here and there, and he was just like looking at me. And I knew it was Pua. And the shelter guy said, "Well, he has never done that with anyone before. I guess this is a sign." And I was like, "Yes, please, I'll like this dog." So I took Pua home, and it was a very stressful day because I couldn't take him to the dorms until I got all the authorization papers, and I needed the dog to get all the authorization papers done. So I couldn't have done that earlier. I had to have the dog with me. And mind you, I was living alone in San Francisco, and I couldn't just bring him home. So I got all the authorizations papers sent from the shelter directly to the school's office, and called them and asked them to speed up the process so I could return home that day. And I took him to Petco, pick up a couple of things that we needed left, and we hang out outside of Starbucks until the documentation got approved, which luckily it did. The people at my school, they were very understanding, especially because Pua is an ESA, and that's how we came to be together, and how we have been spending like every single day. I have not slept one day without Pua since I picked him up. So one of the things that I want to address real quick is, what is an emotional support animal? And unfortunately, that's a legislation that is different for every country. So I'm living in Brazil now, and in Brazil, there is no such thing as an emotional support animal. We don't have any legislation on it. We don't even have a real translation to this term, which sucks. But I'm gonna share with you the legislation that I researched, which was the United States legislation, because I was living there at the time, and I thought I was gonna still live there for the next 3 years at the very least. So there are 3 types of working dogs or working animals. The first type is a service animal. So a service dog is a dog that is trained to perform certain tasks for their handler. Meaning that their handler has a disability, and because of this disability, they need the help of a service animal. And I'm saying service animal because I know that it can also be a tiny pony, even though I never saw one. I'll just call them service dogs, but know that there is this option, I think. So one example is a guide dog. That is the most common example that people think of when they say service animals, service dogs. But there's just a bunch of other type of service dogs. Alert dogs are very good for people with diabetes, and psychiatric service dogs are the ones that people often get confused with emotional support animals. The second type of working dogs is a therapy dog, which is not an emotional support animal. So a therapy dog works for a clinic or a doctor, and they go around different patients, and they participate of the therapy moment, but they don't go home with the patient. They're not the patient's dog. Sometimes they go visit hospitals, and they do their job on site, which is very nice, but I don't know a lot about therapy dogs. Emotional support animals, which is the ones that we're talking about today, it can be every animal. So there's a lot of people who have cats as an emotional support animal. I've seen people who have birds. Literally can be any animal, except human beings. An emotional support animal is an animal that doesn't have training specific to do tasks for their handler, but they do fulfill the companionship and just the simple fact that they exist and that they are a part of the handler's life is their task, is the reason for them to be an emotional support animal. And let me explain using Pua as an example. The simple fact that I have to get out of bed every morning, take Pua to go pee pee, because he does not pee inside. Even if you ask him to, he would not pee inside. So I have to take Pua out to go pee pee. I have to feed Pua. I have to bathe Pua. I have to take Pua on walks. The simple fact that I have to take care of Pua is helpful for my treatment. The fact that I have a little tiny thing that loves me unconditionally is very helpful for my treatment. The fact that I have companionship 24/7 with this little being that I don't have to talk to if I don't want to, like you would have to talk to a human being, helps my treatment so much. So even though Pua is not trained to perform tasks, he has saved my life more times than I can count. People sometimes think that every single person can have an emotional support animal, but that's just not true. You have to have a disability to be eligible for an emotional support animal, because yes, having a companion is great and everybody should have a pet if they think that a pet is what they want, but there's a big difference between wanting and needing one. It's just like having medication. It's just as important. With that being said, there is a lot of things that I experienced being an emotional support animal handler that it just sucks. Like, I've heard so many times, oh, can you emotional support me? Or, oh, how do I get an emotional support animal? Because there are things that Pua can do that other dogs can't. Like, he can fly for free, and it's the same as you're taking your wheelchair and not paying to have your wheelchair in the airplane. Me having my ESA on the airplane is exactly the same. I'm not just taking Pua around to trips because I just want him to know the world. That's not how it works. In the end of the day, I'm just really glad I have him because he's so fundamental to my life. If you have any questions about emotional support animals, or the documentation needed to travel, the documentation needed to live with him in a college dorm and all those, just leave in the comments below. There's a lot of people who feel uncomfortable about talking about ESAs because having an ESA implies that you have a disability, and I don't mind answering questions because my purpose here is to educate people and get people to understand the need and the importance of having an ESA, especially because I got my information out of YouTube, and having people who had ESAs helped me so much to understand that I needed one as well. So yeah, feel free to leave any comments and I'll try to answer them best I can. And thank you for sharing this moment with us. Say bye to Pua. Say bye, people of the road. Thank you for meeting me. He's a little chipin, which means he's a mixture between a pincher and a chihuahua. And he weighs 3 kilos. It's ridiculous. He's very tiny doggy. Say bye. Bye.